In the hands of the incomparable Sebastien Loeb, one of these was victorious in every single tarmac rally it entered, across a 4-year period. 13 rallies, a 100% winning record. This was unbeatable. It is arguably the most dominant world rally car ever. It is a Citroen C4 WRC. It is an automotive masterpiece, and it has just been acquired by Girardeau & Co., who you may remember also own the ex-McRae Impreza that I drove a couple of years ago. So, before I drive this, it seems only appropriate to get Max Girardeau to tell us a little more about it. Max, this is so cool, isn't it? So this is 2008, second year of C4 WRC car.
In the best livery.
In the best livery, which you were telling me just now. So this only came in, one of the reasons for having it in Rally Deutschland spec rather than Monte Carlo spec is because this only came in halfway through.
Yeah, exactly. So this car won 4 rounds of the World Rally Championship with Sebastien Loeb in 2008. First one was Monte Carlo, and the first outing, it was just plain red, which is really interesting. I think obviously they hadn't finalized the deal for sponsorship for Red Bull, and it was only sort of halfway through the season that the deal was done. And you look through the history file on the period pictures, and Sebastien Loeb, this car is all red, he's in a red suit, and then the next rally they turn up in full Red Bull livery. And so yeah, and Rally Deutschland is one of the rallies that he won in the car exactly like this, and I think it just looks great.
So it won Monte Carlo, first time out.
First time out.
Then it won in Sardinia.
Won in Sardinia, yeah.
Deutschland, and then Wales Rally GB.
And then Wales Rally. So it won some pretty iconic races. And Monte Carlo is probably the most iconic, the most special. It's the one that everyone sort of dreams about, and Wales Rally GB as well. Deutschland, I mean, they're all great, but Wales Rally GB and Monte Carlo are the ones.
Yeah, certainly for us anyway. And I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it, when you think about that, because it also did Jordan, and you sort of think, well, hang on a minute, this is done tarmac rallies, sort of kind of different kind of sort of gravel rallies than, you know, mud of Wales Rally GB. So this is chassis 14, yeah, isn't it? So it's done quite a lot of different things, and I think it's interesting because Citroen always, you know, it's reported they would build a tarmac car to start with, and then essentially just jack it up for, if they can make it work on tarmac, then they knew it would have a gravel car.
And on tarmac it did work because it was unbeatable, or certainly Sebastien Loeb in this car on tarmac was absolutely unbeatable. Every time we go out, you know, he would finish on front. I mean, French rally drivers are well known for being the aces of tarmac, but in a Citroen, which, you know, all makes sense. That's why it never lost.
Yeah, absolutely. So after 2008, what was the sort of history of this car?
So 2008 season finished. Sebastien Loeb would obviously get brand new car, right, for the new season, and Citroen would sort of use the same car, same chassis for their sort of junior World Rally team and for their upcoming stars. It did a couple of rallies with a Russian driver who was, I'd say, very moderately successful. I think he did the whole season, but spent more time.
Was that Novikov?
Yes, spent more time sort of going off into the scenery than anything else. But then the following year, which is super cool, Kimi Räikkönen, of all people, because that was the time that he decided, right, I'm going to stop Formula One, I'm going to go do some rallying, which is fantastic, and he actually used this car, chassis 14, in Rally Mexico. So I always say to people, driven by 2 world champions, Sebastien Loeb and Kimi Räikkönen.
It has to be said, one slightly more successfully than the other.
Yes, Kimi had the outing in Mexico, and as he did in true Kimi Räikkönen style, had a little sort of roly-poly down one of the hills in Mexico and never finished the rally. But he was there, he was the one driving.
Yeah, no, that's super cool to have Kimi's in this car as well. And then what happened to it after that?
So after that, then stayed one more year with Citroen and got sold to DMAC Racing, which is quite a well-known Italian and Czech Republic-based rally team that was running this car in, you know, European Rally Championships and Italian Rally Championship. Sold to Luca Pedersoli in Italy. Was a very successful Italian gentleman driver, and we were lucky enough to have the opportunity to buy it from him. So very few owners, really been in France and in Italy, and it had some great little outings, like did Rally Legend one year with, you know, Sebastien Loeb back in the car. So it was quite nice.
That's excellent. So this was the sort of the era we had up to 2005. We had full active diffs, kind of sort of centre, front, and rear.
Quite complicated.
Exactly, yeah. And then this era was an active centre diff, but mechanical front and rear.
Exactly. And so from us, from a collector point of view, from a mere mortal drivers that we are, it's a bit less daunting than having, you know, active diffs and loads of little sort of setup. You know, probably for us, we don't drive enough, so the less fiddling you can do, then the better. And it gives you probably a bit more of a mechanical feel when you drive the car. So a little less daunting, and they were trying to reduce costs, which then is good for us as owners now, as collectors, then is sort of a little less complicated to run.
Having said that, it is sort of, as much as, yes, there were sort of cost-cutting things in there, and there are different things about this car that you can see where they've tried to bring it back to sort of normality. But I mean, just still the lightweight. You look in, obviously the engine sunk right down low. You lift up that boot, and how light, you know, it's metal. But it's so light, isn't it? And
I mean, even, you know, look at the wing, the shape. Like, that's obviously been profiled in a wind tunnel, and the gear shift and all actually the buttons inside. So we say it's a little less complicated, but it's still hugely trick. I mean, it's a bespoke made machine. Obviously, nothing to do with a C4 road car, right?
No, absolutely not. Yeah, slightly cooler than that, and the C4 Loeb edition kind of, you know, couldn't quite live up to.
Didn't quite, no, not quite.
Anyway, it's just such a cool thing, and I'm particularly, I was saying to you before, I'm so excited to drive it because I did have a ride with Sebastien Loeb in 2008 in one of these.
So this exact same year, he took you around.
Took me around on a gravel stage.
And how was it?
Just unbelievable, because I'm a massive Loeb fanboy, so I think he is extraordinary, and to be in that car, it was quite a sort of short test route. I had no idea what it was going to look like. I remember the huge jump that we came over, which didn't look like a jump because it wasn't like going along the flat and you see a sort of ramp coming up. We just went down into this dip, which is sort of takeoff going down into it, compression at the bottom, and then you're going uphill, and just suddenly you take off. And you just have that feeling of going light and then thinking, we're in the air, and then thinking, we're still in the air, so how on earth is this going to work? But he was so calm in the car, just absolutely on top of it. And I'd made sure that he knew I wanted the full-on experience. You know, sort of, I wasn't going to put up with the sort of 7/10 run, and it was just unbelievable. So the work rate, but everything's so direct.
And the speed that he can carry through those corners, it must have been really impressive sitting in the car. You also sit quite low, so
yes, luckily I'm tall, because at least it sort of, I could have and you're trying to sort of watch what he's doing on the pedals and sort of the wheel and stuff like that. But I remember just how early he would get on the throttle in the corners. You know, it was into the corner and then back on the throttle so quickly, obviously making the active diff work. But it was, yeah, what
an experience. And I probably never thought that you would then get into the same car that he took you in. You've got some sort of big shoes to fill now.
Exactly, yes, which I'm pretty sure I won't fill, but you know, just to be in it will be amazing. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Now, before I could actually drive the car, there was a little bit of acclimatisation and French homework to do. Ooh. That is a tight Recaro seat. I'm glad I didn't have any more chocolate digestives this week. Wow. It's all at once kind of sort of, you obviously sit right back in the car here. So it's quite sort of spacious, but it's intimidating because we've got this huge sunstrip across here. And I've no idea where the front of the car is, actually. It just disappears off. You've got a long dashboard, and then sort of looking out, here's where you've got the roll cage in here and the sort of the A-pillar. So yeah, it's quite a sort of intimidating place to be. Then you start looking around at all the switches and buttons, and Max has taught me around what these are. Thankfully, some of it's in English, or English abbreviations, and then some of it is in French, but we'll try and go through them. Steering wheel, obviously got the paddle here, button on the back, which you need to press to engage first. Handbrake here, obviously, and then auxiliary sort of, I suppose in terms of redundancy, you've got the gear lever down here in case the paddle fails. On the wheel itself, there are a plethora of buttons, and I suppose manetinos, to use the Ferrari parlance. Each of them has 5 settings, and you can adjust the throttle pedal sensitivity, centre diff, launch control, and lights. There are also more normal things that you might need on road sections, like a horn and indicators. Down here, so obviously one of the big things, Christian Loriot was sort of probably the first person to really do it, and in the Subarus, and start putting everything right down on the floor, including the co-driver. So Daniel and Elena would have been sort of, really it's not a very nice view out from a co-driver because you're just looking at your notes, you can't really see the road ahead. Down here, so where do we start? Well, we've got a Stilo thing up here, so that's been added afterwards, just as a more modern intercom system. Then moving down here, so we have got the main ignition switch in here, the electrical cutout down here, and then the start button there. Across here, we've got lights, then we've got windscreen wipers, which we will probably need today, fan, then we've got intercom down here, casque, so that's the helmet, one coupe de feu, so coupe feu, so that's the fire extinguisher here, fresh air, so with a big hash around there, so that's the stage map basically, so you obviously have your road map when you're going between the stages, yada yada yada, and then put it on full attack. RAV, so that's brake bias, so arrière, so rear, avant, front, so adjust your brake bias on the go, and then you've got radios down here and diff lock down here, which I assume is if you have a problem in stage and you need to get out, then you can just lock the center diff, so it's doing that. It's having said that it looks complicated, actually I suppose, if you go into a modern Mercedes with all its touchscreens and menus and stuff like that, that's every bit as complicated as this. It just looks intimidating in here.
There are 3 pedals in the footwell, but they're like the bears in the Goldilocks story, with a huge brake pedal and just a tiny clutch pedal, as you need one rather more than the other in stage.
This would have had the full launch control start as well, so you could take your foot off the clutch, hold it on the button on the top here, and then release it as the lights went green as it cashed down from 5. So I suppose if we turn this on and wait for the screen to come up down here, you have to wait for, I think it's about 5 or 8 seconds for this to all come on. There we go, GEMS, General Engine Management System, little Windows icons, and then in fact up here you can change which screen you're on from this switch just here, so to go across between, and some of these can be operated by buttons down on the right hand side, so Daniel Elena could use his feet to start and stop watches, stuff like that, and also windscreen wipers and things like that. Then to start you should put this fans, so I'll talk a bit more loudly. You have to lift these little switches up, so you can't just flick them, you have to lift them up and put them across, and then should be it's so angry, buzzing, fizzing thing, and you can feel it through the seat as well, feel the vibrations. Right, so first gear, hold the button there and then just pull the paddle, fly off handbrake, that, and then we're away. As you can probably tell, it is extremely slippery today, and we're on slick tyres, so it's only give it a couple of laps just to try and get some heat back into the tyres again. Just spinning up on the straight here, do the Loeb thing. Oh, strap stand. Loeb always wanted to be belted really, really tightly down into the car. Love it through here because it's so quick. In this car is extraordinary.
The view out still feels a little restrictive in the tighter corners, making it hard to place, but the controls are all so perfectly arranged that they instantly give you confidence.
This paddle is amazingly sensitive actually. There are times when you can almost up change without meaning to. It's going slippery through there. So you've got 320 brake horsepower, about 430 pounds for the torque, so hence you want to just keep throwing gears at it. This bit's mega through the really tight trees here. It's so slippery under braking. What a thing! Such appreciation for how good the top guys are.
reminds me a bit of Rally Germany actually, this, which is obviously appropriate given the livery we're in. Just no Hinkle sides. Still some big curves though. The way these cars were set up is you really wanted to just get into the corner, maybe really agile on turning, and then you want to be straight at the apex. There almost isn't a lot of feel through this car. You just need to understand what it does, what it wants to do, how it wants to be driven.
It feels much firmer and flatter in attitude than I was expecting. It's more like a touring car, grippier, but then with that familiar crazy responsiveness. It weighs 1,230 kilos as per the regulations, but the way it darts into corners you'd swear it was less, and there are probably snakes with a higher centre of gravity.
Have to be so careful on the brakes in these conditions, because that's where it will really trip you up. And you see it wants to be turned in early, just get it straight. So it's like a front wheel drive car to that extent. There's a bit of a torque interruption if you're not absolutely on it. You kind of want to be flat sticks, really. Just the more time you spend in this, the more you get used to how much you can drive it on the throttle. This car feels so natural on the handbrake. But it's not it's not a car you want to be oversteering past the apex. It's all about getting it sideways before it and then dragging it out on the throttle. That's the sort of nice line you want, where you're not really putting a lot of angle into it, but just letting the car rotate on the handbrake. You're not having to correct it, you get it straight, you drive it through the corner on the throttle. Pick a line, sight through here, wow, that's so cool. You can have so much fun in one of these. And there's still all these to sort of learn. I mean, I've been playing a little bit with the diff just to make it a bit more aggressive to kind of make up for me. I think that the trouble is that in these sort of conditions, it's really on the braking that you struggle. Yes, there's some traction here, but you can be fine on the brakes, but when you're not, then you just lose everything. It becomes that horrible glassy feeling on your eyes. What a privilege. It's much more tied down, this car, than some of the other WRC cars I've driven. Sort of compared to the fully active diff cars, like the 2005 Focus, which I drove, that was kind of much more oversteering, where you drove it more on the throttle, more like a gravel car, but then that sort of makes sense with the way this is developed. It feels really secure, even when you're sort of, I know I'm not pushing it absolutely to its limits, but it's so precise actually.
What a privilege to play at being Loeb for an afternoon. To me, rally cars are just the best. And of course, it's road registered, so you could take it down the pub if you wanted, which makes it even cooler. Of all the ones I've driven, this is perhaps the most serious feeling WRC car. What I mean by that is that there is often a slight looseness to them, but this is almost laser guided, and that's in the wet. In the dry, I can imagine a C4 WRC would be, well, unbeatable.